Welcome back. I want to do, just to have a quick look and sort of do a bit of a talk about the engines on both cars. Both cars have got absolutely legendary straight six engines, and this one is the XK 4.2 litre, but as standard it doesn't come. It doesn't come with this. This is extra. This has been added. This is the digitally injected LPG system. The fuel injectors, the petrol is injected from this rail, and then on top we've got separate injectors. So ignore that. And they don't actually come, either Jaguars, they don't come with a 10mm sort of racing leads. So I put those racing leads on there. Now this is a 4.2. And it's actually an ancient engine. It first was produced, people don't realise quite how old this engine is. It was first produced in 1948. This is the engine that was in the XK 120. It really is an ancient and well-loved and well-tried engine. Now Jaguar were very successful with the XK 120, the XK 140, XK 150. The C-Type, the D-Type and the E-Type all had this engine in different sizes, sort of 3.4, 3.8. This is a 4.2. Then it continued on to the Mark 10, the S-Type, the Mark II, and then it came into the XJ series in 1968. So this engine has been was in production from 1948 right through till 1986 when the XJ40 came out. And the XJ40 had what was called, it was still a very similar engine. We'll look at that engine in a minute, which is the basic, it's similar to what's in that red one. And it's just a remarkable unit, and it's a lot of people look at it and think, oh, it's a V8 or a V6 because you've got two overhead cams here. So from a distance, people that are not familiar with engines, they might think that was a V8, but it's not a V8. It's a straight six that's got overhead camshafts, and honestly, it's a beautiful, beautiful engine. It's in 4.2 litre form. It's extremely powerful. It's got a very, very long stroke, so it's not the most sort of rev happy engine. It's got a huge amount of torque in lower rev range. When it gets up to the high revs, it's noisy. It's massively powerful, but it is noisy because it's got such a long stroke. But honestly, it's very, very tough. Extremely well-lived engine. If looked after, these can easily do 250,000 miles. But it's critical to change the oil. They were even used in some small tanks and scout, sort of army scout vehicles. Yeah, that's how tough this thing is. It was it was used in military vehicles. So I just love it, and it was an ancient engine when this car went into production in '84. This is a 1948 design, and well, I say 1948 production. So it had been designed in the early to mid 40s. It's so old. It's truly astonishing that it can sort of cope with everyday traffic. And I drive this car very regularly, well up to 1,000 miles a week, and I'm fanatical with the oil changes. But let's have a look at the other engine, and it's equally glorious, and it's not done as many years as the XK engine. But the first thing to point out, it's called a straight six, but this is a straight six, but it's actually called, I beg your pardon, it's called a slant six. If you look very carefully, it doesn't sit straight up. It's this bank, it's aiming towards us over here. If we look around the other side, you see the engine seems to be so far away, and it is. The center of the car is here. And that engine is cocked over. It's called it is a straight six, but it's known as a slant six. And obviously the engine's slanting over at an angle. And Jaguar experienced with different angles, and they did sort of put it in at 30 degrees, and by putting the engine in at such a strange angle, the sump is sort of sitting over here. You can get the bodywork much lower. The problem was, by canting it over at 30 degrees, that side, the other side around here, it made it almost impossible to sort of maintain. Obviously, when it was tilted right over, all of these workings under here were just hidden, and it was almost impossible. So what they did, they sort of reduced it from 30 degrees and brought it back to 15 degrees. That is canted over at 15 degrees, and you don't notice it straight away, but when when now I point it out, you can probably clearly see, the engine is, it's over at a 15 degree angle, and that allows it to sit a lot lower. The sump misses the suspension, because the sump is actually lifted up. It's remarkable, and it's just helped to bring the whole front much lower. It's a beautiful engine. What most people don't realise, this engine is the engine which is in the Aston Martin DB7. This is the 4-litre version. The one that went in the Aston Martin was a 3.2-litre version of this, and I've had one of those, and it's absolutely glorious. I have to be honest, it's not very powerful. It's only 3.2 litres, and this is obviously quite a big car. But it's so smooth, and what makes it so smooth, the engine is very close to what's called square. And when I say square, I'm talking about the actual the diameter of the piston bore and the actual stroke that the piston takes are almost identical. I think it's an 81mm bore and an 82mm stroke, so the 3.2 is almost square, and the closer they get to an identical sort of diameter and length of stroke, the smoother the engine will be. That 3.2 is almost square, so it revs so freely, and when it's warm, it's so smooth. The problem is it's just not massively powerful. Now this one, it's got the same bore, in 81mm, I think I said, but I think it's a 97mm stroke, so it's got a very long stroke. So this one's it's just nowhere near as smooth, and but it's honestly, the brute force of the 4-litre is truly astonishing. This is a very heavy car, and this engine with the gearbox in sport mode is absolutely, it's just brutal. It really is phenomenal, and they did supercharge this engine as well. Now that one is just stratospheric.